Hello and welcome to our Florida podcast. If you're new here, we are two sisters who were born and raised in Florida, and we are passionate about nature, conservation, history, and the humanities. So every Monday, we bring you a new episode about just that. Our goal is to bring awareness to the rich history and ecological parts of our state. So whether you're a transplant or a longtime resident like us, you can share our appreciation and explore and protect the natural beauty of our state yourself. It's our Florida podcast. My name's Kaylee, and my stories typically center around Florida history and stories from the generations that called our state home before I ever did.
Co-host Mae, and every other Monday I will share about Florida's unique wildlife and ecosystems, and even or current events impacting Florida's wildlife.
Awesome. And today, before we get started, it's my birthday.
Jazz fingers.
I don't know.
We both did.
But yeah, actually, the day that this comes out is my birthday. So
She's
that's
28, y'all.
Getting old, getting up there. No, I'm just kidding.
She's got a cool birthday party that's been planned. And she doesn't know it. Well, she does know it, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're recording this ahead of time so that we can enjoy said birthday that Megan is planning for me, which I'm so excited about. And so, Megan, I have it in here. You're supposed to ask, how does it feel to be 28?
Oh, got it. How does it feel to be 28, Kaylee?
Good. I think I'm excited. I'm very excited for, I'm very excited though we took a couple days off. My birthday is kind of nice because it lands at the same time as, well, first of all, I share a birthday with my grandma. So happy birthday, Grandma Betts. And then
if she's listening, she would get her birthday shout out. But Grandma, you haven't been listening.
Oh, a little shade. But also, it's like the same week as 4th of July, so it lines up pretty well for taking time off.
PTO and all of that time off.
So that's exciting. So yeah, we're actually going to take 4 days and go and hang out. We found an Airbnb that has a pool and a pool table, and we're going to go check out some springs, probably on the Chassahowitzka, maybe Rainbow River, maybe the location of this episode, which actually inspired the topic for today. And we are talking about Wikiuachi Springs State Park.
Y'all, you know what's another great thing about her birthday? So her birthday's in June, my birthday's in December. That means that we both have our 6-month birthdays, which means it's her birthday, which means it's my birthday. When it's my birthday, it's also her birthday. It works out great. And yeah, this week's about WikiWatchee, and we're really excited.
I actually really love my birthday because it's like halfway through the year.
So I get good, right?
It just feels so natural. It feels right.
I think the 30th is like such a perfect number for you. I know you hate it. I know you do.
I'm really excited about the number 28 though.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I feel like low-key we have like
your favorite numbers.
Yeah, I feel like we low-key have like your 28th birthday is kind of like being like your 30th birthday, like a party, a trip, and like.
Yeah, it feels very special.
It feels very exciting. Okay, sorry, back to the actual podcast.
Okay. So we are talking about Wikiuachi Springs State Park, which is famous for being the home of the mermaids. Are you very familiar with Wikiuachi?
I know they've got the mermaids. I know they've got the show. I know that sometimes they do a hiring event and like there's mermaids lined up on to see if they can go in to be a mermaid. I watched a news channel thingy where they went to visit one time as a kid, and that was what they were doing, was a big hiring event for them. And there's a lot of work and a lot of requirements into it, but no.
Cool. Okay. Sweet. Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that much either. I had never gone. I think I always was just like, it seems tourist trappy. I'm good. So it was interesting to look it up and like actually see the history and how long and like why are there mermaids in a spring? So yeah. So back it up just a second. The name WikiWatchee comes from the Seminoles and means little springs or winding river. We're not sure which. And while the name may mean little springs, in 2007, it was discovered like a team of divers went down into the caves and discovered that the cave system in Wikiuachi has depths of over 400 feet below ground, which is the deepest freshwater cave system in North America.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I think, and I kind of saw conflicting things on this, but it seems like they haven't even, like, it's not completely mapped by any means, but they know for sure 400 feet and that is, like, excessively deep. So, pretty cool. Wikiuachi Springs State Park is located in Hernando County. It's in the Brooksville area off of Florida's Adventure Coast, which I learned is actually just a marketing term. Were you familiar with like it's like the Adventure Coast is north of Tampa up through the Big Bend area. And I think it's because there's like all of these preserves and state parks and everything. And then Sun Coast is Tampa south through Sarasota. It's like all the beaches, Siesta Key and Honeymoon Island and all of that stuff. And then over on your side, you've got the Space Coast.
Yeah, that's the only one I knew about was the Space Coast. That's what I was gonna say. But it definitely makes sense, and it's like a marketing scheme. But also, it's not inaccurate either because, like, Central Florida, I mean, I've gone to countless rocket launches and different things, and
Yeah.
we've got the Kennedy Space Center, which I have not gone to yet, and I should while I live up here.
We need to go. Yeah. I really need
Yeah.
to go. And we need to do an episode about that, but we'll come back to it. But yeah, and it is about an hour north of Tampa, right off of US 19. The actual springs, the state park, is part of a 7.5-mile river, the Wikiuachi River, that actually runs from that main spring out into the Gulf of Mexico. And then the name Wikiuachi comes from the Seminoles and means little springs or winding river. So we're not actually 100% sure as to which one it is. If it is Little Springs, it's kind of funny because this is actually a first magnitude spring, which means, it's the highest classification, like, it's pushing out the most. Over 100 million gallons of groundwater flow out of this spring each day, enough to fill 150 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single day.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a very high producing spring. It's first magnitude, so like for reference, that's just like Wakula, it's just like Silver Springs that we've talked about on the show before. And it is fed by the same aquifer, that Floridan aquifer that we've talked about. So if you haven't listened, be sure to listen to that episode. The basin of the spring is 100 feet wide with limestone sides. So it's a very large, like a large cavity. And from May 22nd until August 30th in 2007, the discharge level at Wikiuachi Springs dropped to a level that allowed for cave divers to gain entry into the cave system of the spring. So like the water's kind of reduced during this time, so a lot of cave divers went through. And the Karst underwater research team successfully executed exploration dives and the necessary in-water decompression to explore approximately 6,700 feet in multiple passages at an average depth of 265 feet freshwater with a maximum depth of 407 FFW feet freshwater. The 407 depth makes the cave system under Wikiuachi Spring the deepest known freshwater cave in the U.S.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I also saw some things where it
And
said...
when was this?
This was in 2007.
Wow, okay.
So, barely 18
Not too
years
long.
now.
Yeah.
Right. So, I promised you mermaids. Where did the mermaids come in? Right now. So in 1946, Newton Perry, a former U.S. Navy man who trained Navy frogmen to swim underwater in World War II, developed WikiWatchee with the intention of turning it into a roadside attraction. At the time, the spring needed to be cleaned up. People had dumped old refrigerators and abandoned cars in it. And while the spring was right off of US 19, at the time, that road was only a 2-lane road.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, it's technically part of the highway system, but it's only 2 lanes, so it's very small. There were no gas stations, no grocery stores, or movie theaters in that area. So it's a spring in the middle of nowhere. I was so peeved when I was like, what do you mean people were dumping like refrigerators and abandoning cars there? Are you kidding me? What did people in the 20s value?
Not a damn thing.
I wonder. But yeah, so he spends a year cleaning up the spring, building an amphitheater that held seats for 18 people, and developing air tubes that would allow the women who would be his mermaids to stay underwater and not have to come up for air. He ended up using a tube with an air compressor pumping air into it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? And with all that said, the first mermaid show was held on October 13th, 1947. The mermaids performed synchronized ballet moves underwater while breathing through the air hoses hidden in the scenery. And if you look at those pictures, it's those first couple of pictures. I was really surprised to learn. Actually, I'll let you look at the picture and you tell me what you notice about these mermaids.
I'm slacking. I actually didn't even have it open yet, so. Oopsies. Which one should I be looking at?
Like the first two pictures, first two or three.
Okay, so I see a theater thingy with a bunch of people.
Okay.
Oh, they look like ballerinas. They don't also look like they don't have a top on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was gonna go with they don't have tails.
Well, yeah, you know what? That's a good point.
That's what. So they didn't have tails in the beginning, but they were one-piece bathing suits, and then yeah, exactly. It's like underwater ballet. It's very graceful. There were only two tubes for air, and they were hidden off to the side. So there's this
Wow.
underwater amphitheater. So it's like 6 feet down. There's this glass pane, and the people sit behind it to watch. The girls are doing these beautiful ballet moves, and they would also perform. So, like, it's a little bit confusing trying to figure out, like, okay, what was the 1940 show versus the 1950 show in some of these cases? But these early shows included them eating a banana, like doing certain tricks. So, one of those was eating a banana underwater.
What?
Yeah.
Why? It's so crazy.
I think just because it's like proving that they're mermaids, that they're, because like you don't see the hose very much, like everyone, but like, that hose is down there, and then they can eat the banana, which makes me claustrophobic to think about. And also
The texture.
they would drink a grapette, which was an uncarbonated beverage. And there's actually videos of this, so I'll send you some links to some videos. But yeah, they like pop the cap and do it, and the thing is you have to drink it all in one go.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
you can't put your,
No.
and then they drink this whole beverage while underwater. It's very impressive. I am not built out. I am not built to be a mermaid.
Me neither.
Thinking about the idea of like trying to chew and swallow while underwater makes
I
me
just don't want
so
to eat underwater.
claustrophobic. They would also do a deep dive. So a mermaid would go down over 100 feet, 114 feet, send her air tube up to the top. And then after waiting 1 to 3 minutes, so it like builds suspense, like she doesn't have air. How is she doing this? Then she like floats to the top gracefully and is posing and flipping through the air. And it's really neat. Kind of crazy, but it's really, really neat. So that was like one of their big tricks, was then one of the mermaids would do a deep dive into the spring.
That's so fun.
Yeah. In the 1950s, WikiWatchee was one of the top tourist spots in the country. The theater was expanded to hold 50 seats, and several Hollywood films were filmed in the Springs, including Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid, filmed in 1948. You see that movie poster?
Yeah.
During this time, several different vendors set up shops in the Wikiuachi Springs and offered a slew of different attractions, but it was more of a co-op. So these attractions were all private owners, like all kind of renting space at the springs rather than all owned by the springs. So some of these included an orchid garden, an exotic insect museum, an abandoned Seminole Village exhibit, a train ride through the surrounding forest, a boat tour, a petting zoo, and a gift shop. I've included pictures and will highlight a few of those things. So the orchid gardens, pretty self-explanatory. It included a hothouse and allowed visitors to view a variety of different orchids. Then you had boat tours and gift shops, which are still available today. The petting zoo has closed, though it seems like that was fairly recently, like December 2020 was what closed it. Like COVID kind of killed the petting zoo, and you can see pictures in there of that petting zoo. And then you get to the, quote, abandoned Seminole Village, and it's pretty impossible to find information about this aside from a photo and the caption with this photo. So in the photo, you see this naturalist, like, feeding a hog, and I can't quite tell if it's mounted or not. I think it is. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems
weird. It's all black and white. Obviously, if you're watching the video, this would be a great one to look at. And if you go to socials, we'll post it on there too if you're listening. But the photo caption just says, naturalist and animal trainer John Hamlet feeding a boar in the abandoned Seminole Village section of Wikiuachi Springs in the early 1960s. Construction of the village required 2 months. The design was based on tin types from the Smithsonian. He brought in and trained animals like boars, monkeys, deer, raccoons, and big cats and placed them along the riverbank for the entertainment of boat tour guests.
icky.
Yeah, icky. Exactly. The attraction no longer exists, of course, and thank goodness, and probably for good reason, but it gets its origins in some truth. There was a Seminole burial mound found here, and I found this picture in the archives of Bonnie Georgiadis. at an archaeological dig at the Wikiuachi Springs, July 1970. It seems like they found some pottery, some Spanish beads, and artifacts have also been found within the park. So the park has a history, yeah, but the history that was being portrayed in the 50s was not accurate and was gross.
Great.
I mean, 50s. All right. And then one of the other early attractions was the Mae Museum of Tropics. You scroll down to that next picture and tell me what you see.
It seems so cool. It's a giant, it's not a rhino beetle, but it definitely makes me think of a rhino beetle. Low-key, it's kind of cool.
Mae Natural History Museum of the Tropics is a nonprofit organization that displays the world's largest private insect collection. James Mae acquired thousands of insects and arthropods that make up the collection from the late 1800s until his death in 1956, and then his son, John Mae, continued his father's legacy, building a museum in Wikiuachi, Florida that lasted from 1954 to 1964, and a museum in Colorado that opened in the 50s and is still open today.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you see on the picture there's a postcard of a large sculpture that they had of a Hercules beetle that was like attract people to come in and check it out. And then the next picture below that, you can see all the cases of all of these insects displayed, which is in black and white with like the light backlighting it. It's pretty cool, a little creepy.
Definitely a little creepy, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So in 1959, change was underway when the American Broadcasting Co., ABC, the ABC, purchased the property. They wanted to put everything under like one umbrella, like Disney World. Like everything around this is owned by Disney, but like in this case, ABC owns all this stuff. So they were buying up the vendors, so vendors could either move out or sell to them. And so that beetle museum, which is not the correct word for it, but all the insects and everything, they ended up deciding that they were not going to sell their entire collection that they, was his father's legacy. And so they picked up and moved to Colorado. That's how they ended up in Colorado instead of in Florida.
Okay.
Because they're like, we're not selling all this to you guys. And I think that's a really good point.
Rightfully so.
ABC built a new theater, which is the current theater, which has 400 seats and goes like 20 feet down, I think. It's definitely below and goes a lot deeper. They started to use they started revamping the shows using elaborate plots, lifts and music and storylines such as Underwater Circus, The Mermaids and the Pirates, and Underwater Follies. The Mermaids performed Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, Snow White, and Peter Pan. So now...
No Little Mermaid?
Nope. No Little Mermaid. The Mermaids and the Pirates. Yeah, so they're like putting together these different shows. So it's like a full underwater theater production at this point. The Incredible Mr. Limpet, an American live-action / animated comedy film produced by Warner Bros., had its premiere on January 20th, 1964 at the Wikiuachi Springs Underwater Theater, and it was the world's first underwater movie premiere.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. You want to be a mermaid for your birthday?
No.
I can change the theme and everything,
I don't.
you know?
I don't.
We could, no, you know what? I think Kaylee would love it. I think you would just adore a mermaid-themed birthday party.
I can't
Be
even
like you're
put
10 again?
normal fins on my feet without having like a claustrophobic panic attack. So no.
Well, it's your birthday, so we can get over it at the same time and then celebrate it.
Anyways. All right. So the heyday for the park was really like in the 50s and 60s, and then the roadside attraction thing, like roadside attraction culture in America, just kind of starts to take more of a backseat. And so ABC sells the park in the 1970s to Florida Leisure Attractions Incorporated. In 1982, a white sand beach, water slides, and a tubing river run opened within the park as Buccaneer Bay. And actually, have you seen pictures of the Buccaneer Bay?
No, I don't think so.
Should Google it real quick. So like on the other side of this spring in this area, they bring in like all this, white sand. They put in full, like several different water slides. They put in like a little lazy river tubing track and everything. So it's like a water park, but it's going into a spring. I think it's one of the only ones in Florida, or it's like a water park that goes into the spring, which is neat. I don't know. I have complicated feelings about that.
I just feel like something that's like, if it's naturally made, it should be left like as natural as possible, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of a privilege that Florida has these type of resources and that we don't need to be going in there and putting in giant slides. Like, isn't that what we have theme parks for?
Yep. Yep, but I think so this put in 82. So yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm with you. Like I feel like that's what theme parks are for and keep it out of the springs. But I think that the good side of this, I guess, is that this probably attracts a lot of families and people that might not go to a spring otherwise or even see or realize what a spring is.
Yeah, that is a good point and true. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, in 1997, in honor of the 50th anniversary of WikiWatchee performance, former mermaids were invited back to perform. This was a hit and became a recurring event. So
That's so cute.
it's so cute. No, there's a great article that interviews Vicky Smith, who had been a WikiWatchee mermaid, I think in 61. I don't know. I don't remember the exact year. But she shares how much she loved doing it, how beautiful it was. And at 78 years old when she was doing this, she was the oldest performing mermaid.
Wow.
Yeah, which is so cool. So like she's doing the show, doing the dive and like coming up and she's one of the people that's like in that iconic lift picture that is the statue up
Really?
front. Yeah, she's one of I'm if I understood,
Pretty sure that's her.
yeah, she if not either way, there's a great picture of her doing that at 78 and she talks about just how like once you get she missed it, how it's like, you know, first job, best job she ever had and like she was a local teen from Brooksville and started when she was 17 and she's like, yeah, when you graduated high school, you either got married and a lot of girls did, you went to college or you became a Wikiuachi mermaid. And I loved being a Wikiuachi mermaid. So it's just so cool she was able to do that, still doing that at 78. That was such a hit that became a thing that like they'll do special performances. I don't know if it's once a year or twice a year, but there'll be scheduled special performances that feature the original mermaids.
That is so cool.
I was like, and once you get in the water, like you still feel weightless and just you're floating and it just all comes back to you. She's like using the breathing tube. Like everyone's like, oh, what if you forget? It's like you don't forget it. It's just like ingrained and like you're in the water and it's like I'm 17 again. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I'll link that article. You guys should read it. She was also featured in a cool documentary that I watched that was put together in 2017 called Mermaids. That covered the story of the Wikiuachi mermaids, as well as several other mermaids. There was ladies that perform at the Only Mermaid bar, which I thought was wild. So it was a really neat documentary. It covered the story of a trans woman and how like transformational it was, you know, before she was able to do like the surgeries and everything. Like the mermaid community was really welcoming and like really felt like home. So it was neat. I thought it covered like some difficult things or things that you'd be like, oh, this is just a joke, but really respectfully and really interesting and eye-opening way. And it was included on Prime if you've got an Amazon Prime membership.
Ooh, I'll borrow Jared's.
Yeah. Okay. But despite these attractions, after 30 years, the park was extremely ran down and was in danger of closing permanently. So by the time we get to 2000s, it's very ran down. It's not being well managed. People aren't being able to make their lease payments and all that. And it's getting lost. So the Save Our Tails campaign was born, which is cute. Good marketing. And the city of Wikiuachi and surrounding areas began a fundraising campaign to try and save the park by making needed renovations. Eventually, a loophole in the lease was found and the property was transferred to the city of Wikiuachi. So, a fun aside, city of Wikiuachi, it's actually no longer a city. It got its city part taken away. But when it was incorporated in 1966, it had a total of 9 residents. So that's why it's not a city anymore, is because like even at its heyday, there was like 9 people. I think the mayor at one point was one of the former mermaids. So it's neat. It's a really cool little like tidbit. Like, oh yeah, the city of Wikiuachi. So regardless, though, there was a loophole in the lease. They were able to, like, the city was able to take control of the Wikiuachi. And in 2008, the state of Florida took over the area and it became a state park. And with the help of state funding and private donations, got a much needed facelift and is the thriving park and attraction that we know it as today. and it's the only place to see living mermaids in the springs.
What?
I will say that there is a Wikiuachi like preserve that is managed by the Southwest Florida Water Management District, which is an
Yeah.
insane acronym. So they have bought a lot of the surrounding property. There's a huge preserve. It's a really big black bear habitat, actually. There's a lot of bird watching and everything. And aside from the mermaid shows and the Buccaneer Bay, you can also just put in and kayak down the river. So that's cool. They've also changed stuff. It used to be that you could kayak down the river and there were beaches that you could stop off at and hang out and kind of party and tailgate down the river. And they've recently changed that because, like a lot of our springs, and I didn't get into this too much because I was like, nope, it's a happy episode about mermaids. We're not going to get into all the stuff, but it's facing the same issues that a lot of our Florida springs are, which is lower levels, not enough output, and high nitrogen levels, which means more grass growing, which means the composition of the springs is changing. We've talked about like the high nitrogen and how that affects the manatees and all of that. So it's struggling in the same ways. We'll say that thankfully, like in 2001, a huge chunk of property was bought to be protected and preserved around it to help like ensure that it has good water quality. While you can still kayak down, there are like the whole thing is basically no swim. You can't swim in the river, which it's not that you can't swim. You can swim, but you can't dock your boat. So
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So like
how much swimming you're really going to do if you can't dock. So.
Exactly. And part of that, so there's a couple different reasons, and we'll nerd out for just a second because that's how I love to experience the springs, is kayaking and swimming and all of that stuff. Like I love like the more natural side of it. I've actually never even done like the floating in a tube down the river. I've always done like the kayaking and stuff. I know.
Yes, you have.
No, I haven't. I've never inner tubed down a river, down spring.
I've done it a couple times, but I thought I did it with you guys.
No, we always go kayaking. I would probably
kayaking. I think sitting in the tube sucks, truthfully.
Yeah.
I don't know why people go out and do it. It really sucks. You get burned in horrible places. Your butt's in the water. You're constantly worried about is something going to bite my butt, or at least I am. And it just sucks. You get stuck in awkward places, then you flip out, then you can't get back in, or you do get back in. I don't know. I think tubing sucks.
You're right.
Personally.
I did tube once. I tubed with Jenny from work after summer camp in Jenny Springs. That's right. We went to Jenny Springs and we tubed, and that was insane. We went to Jenny Springs on move-in weekend for UF, and that was not a good plan.
Ooh, that's rough.
It was insane. But yeah, no, I'm much more of a kayak or paddleboard or canoe. Well, actually, I've never canoed either, but more of a kayak.
Canoed now.
Yeah, I like having that control and like being able to check stuff out and paddle and all of that.
We like kayaking. Kayaking is fun.
But because they were starting to get a lot of pollution, a lot of discarded bottles, a lot of noise complaints, and also just when people were docking their boats and stuff, you're like ramming it into the shore and it messes up the embankments, and it also can lead to the spread of like these different grasses that start to take over and clog the waterways and everything. So now you cannot swim, you cannot dock. Like I said, you can swim, but you can't dock. You have to have your vessel with you at all times. So essentially you can't get out. Is kind of the unwritten bit of it. You can't have any glass containers, you can't have any alcohol, and you can't have any disposable containers. And actually, if you are going to check out the springs, don't bring disposable containers. Put your sandwiches like not in a plastic bag, put them in a container that you're going to take home. There are several springs that require it, like Rainbow River is one of them. And so I've definitely gotten there and then been in a panic and like, okay, I guess I'm going to put my sandwiches in this container and I'm going to move this over here. And then I've got like glass containers and stuff, like the good Tupperware containers instead of putting stuff in sandwich bags. But I digress. So they've got more strict rules like that now. So it's more of just a short, direct paddle down the river. There's a shuttle service that you can pay for. Seem pretty reasonably priced too, like $8 or something. But yeah, so you can check it out on that side. I have to admit that like as I was looking this up, I was looking it up because I had never been, because I always just kind of wrote it off as like a tourist trap. I was like, well, we're going to be right around there, so I should look it up and see maybe we want to go. And I'm kind of like, I don't know. I feel like there's other springs I want to go to. But I do want to stop in and see it at some point. And I think it'd be neat to see some of the history. I'm sure they've got like all the old postcards. It's very cool seeing the old pictures and everything. And they're still doing mermaid shows. So, like I said, I do think this is probably a great spring for families to like
You
check
can
it
even
out.
get married.
You can get married at the only place where
The mermaids.
with the mermaids. So yeah, what do you think?
I think it's a cool place. I've been like in that same boat where I'm just like, I don't know if I really, it's cool. I don't know if I really want to like contribute to it. Also, we're both big kayakers, swim people. Well, I don't know. I love going to Wekiva Mill to swim. And like, I don't really.
Yeah. All right.
Overall, I think it's super cool. I don't know if we'll do it for your birthday trip because there's also so many springs around in the area. But overall, it is pretty cool. And I do like the history of a lot of it. It's so crazy that the way they started the shows and versus what they do now. And I think it's so fun that they do like some of the original swimmers get to come back and they do shows like that way. I think that's so fun.
That would be cool to watch. I guess when they do it, it's like standing room only. Which yeah, makes sense.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Definitely check out that documentary too, Mermaids. It's on Amazon Prime. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for joining me on my birthday. Please give us a 5-star review. You can find us anywhere where you listen to podcasts and on all social media at our Florida podcast. And if you have any experience with the mermaids, if you've been a mermaid maybe, or if you have a cool story, go into WikiWatchee, send us an email, ourfloridapodcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Happy exploring and be kind.
Bye, everyone.